everyone. Just in case this becomes a Patreon-only thing, we are currently filming our first attempt at a live radio show. Andy, we through YouTube algorithms, we discovered
this is a good start.
Well, I'm going to give a different intro if it works. I'm going to give a different. This is the Patreon version.
We did a thing.
So basically, through the algorithm, we discovered that people watch the Rick and Morty content and our comic books crossover, so we decided we would do a Rick and Morty comic. But we thought it'd be more fun to have a Morty and a Rick.
Aw, jeez.
And I told Dan that we're doing this an hour and a half ago.
He did.
Here we go. I'll be your narrator in every voice that isn't Rick and Morty, apparently. And Andy is Morty, and Dan is Rick.
Has less lines. It worked out well for me.
The Smith household. From within, Jerry can be heard yelling at Morty. Well, I think it's time you started earning your keep around here, young man, Jerry yells.
Aw, jeez. I don't know, Dad. In between school and my adventures with Rick, it seems like a kind of a lot.
Morty tells his father. The family sits around the table, angry looks in their faces as Jerry begins to tell a when I was a kid story, and then he worked 2 jobs before Rick jumps up and interrupts him.
Yeah, and how'd that work out for you, Jerry? What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you because you're so buried in debt.
He yells.
Jobs are for idiots, Jerry.
Rick gets up, beginning to storm off as he grabs Morty's arm and drags him away with him.
You want to feel like a king, huh? With all your little serfs working on your land? You want to feel like a big man, Jerry? At least let me show your son how smart people make money.
He yells. They stop at the garage door, with Rick fiddling with the key to unlock it. From the kitchen, gentle sobs reach Morty's ears.
Aw, jeez, Rick. That was pretty messed up, man. I think I hear him crying.
Morty tells his grandpa, but Rick is only half listening.
You can't something an omelet with something eggs. Am I right?
Rick tells Morty absent-mindedly. He opens the door with a flourish, looking around for a moment.
How much do you know about the stock market, Morty?
Rick asks as he begins to rummage through some boxes.
I think it's a aggregation of buyers and sellers trading stocks, which are they're like an equity stake in a corporation or something.
Morty replies. Rick looks over his shoulders as he continues to rummage through the boxes.
Jeez, Morty, next time just say nothing. It'd be less embarrassing.
He whirls around with a small device in his hands, showing it to Morty.
This is all you need to know about the stock market, Morty.
He tells the boy. Morty looks at the device, questioning what it is.
It predicts the future, Morty.
Rick tells him, explaining that they can play the intergalactic stock market with it. Rick moves away to pull the tarp off of his spaceship while Morty continues to study the device, questioning how legal it might be.
I'm perfectly aware of how legal it is, Morty. And besides, all you have to do is put your name on the forms. I'll handle everything else. Don't even trip, dog.
Rick tells him. Morty stares at his grandpa as he begins to climb into the spaceship.
That felt a little forced, Rick. I mean, are we even saying that anymore?
He tells Rick.
What are you getting at, Morty?
Rick asks as they both buckle up their seatbelts.
It just feels a little on the nose, you know? Saying don't even trip, dog. Like you're saying it's because it's the thing you're supposed to say. I don't know, Rick. Just forget it.
Morty tells him. They take off with Rick's feelings hurt.
No, I won't forget it, Morty. You can't unpoop that turd.
Rick tells him. Morty tries to placate his grandpa, telling him that he's on board with their plan to stick it to Jerry. Later, they enter the Intergalactic Stock Exchange and they move through the hustling building. Large crowds of aliens walking in every direction. Morty looks around visibly nervous while Rick tells him not to worry about anything.
Just stick with me and do exactly what I say, all right?
He tells the young boy. They keep walking and Rick takes a swig of his flask.
Technically speaking, I'm not allowed in here,
he says offhandedly. They continue to walk past the lines of aliens with Morty looking even more worried.
I thought you said this was on the up and up. You know I don't like to break the rules.
Morty whines.
Yeah, and that's a real charming quality. I bet the girls love that, don't they, Morty?
Rick questions, anger flashing across Morty's face.
I do just fine. Not that it's any of your business.
Morty begins to yell, but they're interrupted by a voice calling for Rick. A man stands there wearing a bright, multicolored pants, coat, and bowler hat. Around his neck hangs a clock, and he grasps a cane. Looks like I showed up just in, the man begins. Rick interrupts.
Time, yeah, we get it. You have a time gimmick, in case you couldn't tell by the clock around your neck.
The man introduces himself to Morty as Professor Tuck, time detective, first class. Morty shakes his hand.
Wow.
He exclaims. Rick gets angry at his grandson's words.
You're actually impressed by this Flava Flav mall cop and Professor Tuck? Why not call yourself Dr. Clock and get it over with?
He yells. Professor Talk stands before Rick, informing him that he knows he's not supposed to be here. Yet here you are, and I wonder why that is. Or perhaps I already know. He begins, but Rick begins to yell at him.
No, you don't know, because if you did, you'd have arrested me already. You know why? Because time travel doesn't make sense. It's a paradox. Time travel is impossible garbage science.
Rick yells, before finally storming off with Talk calling after him. I'll be watching you, Rick Sanchez. Watching you.
Did he really just make a watch pun?
Just keep walking, Rick.
The two get in line so that Morty can register, so that they can trade stocks from home. Morty still isn't sure about this plan, but Rick explains that he needs to do this. He needs to challenge Jerry at home.
You just gotta pull him out and lay him on the bar, Morty. You gotta measure him, Morty.
Rick tells him.
I don't like where this is going, Rick.
Morty tells him, shrinking away. Their name is called, and Rick tells them that they'll talk about this again when they're rich men. Later, construction workers are adding more levels onto the Smith household. Along the front of the building are the words Morty and Rick Inc. Inside, Jerry isn't happy. He yells that he can't even hear himself think with the constant banging and construction anymore. What do you need to think about so hard? Beth asks offhandedly, lounging on the couch. She doesn't understand why Jerry just can't be happy for Morty. He was the one who wanted Morty to get a job in the first place. Well, I sure didn't ask him to add a $10 million extension onto the house. He's 14, Beth. What does he need with 3 bedrooms anyway? Jerry yells before storming out of the living room. He begins to go upstairs but is distracted by a knock at the door. He opens it, discovering a large box. Suddenly, a strange cat-like robot leaps out of the box. Jerry crumples to the floor in fear. Please, God, no! The children are upstairs! The valuables are in the safe! Code 7436! Please let me live! He screams like a little girl. The robot walks past him, heading upstairs. Thank you, user. The location of your children and valuables has been noted, the robot tells him. Jerry looks up to see Rick standing there, drinking a cup of coffee.
Christ, Jerry! Normally I'd make fun of what a coward you are, but man, living as you is punishment enough.
Rick tells him. He steps over Jerry, heading upstairs. Jerry gets up, pleading with Rick to put a stop to this. He asks if he admits that he was wrong and that Morty doesn't need a job, will he stop this? Rick stares at the man for a moment.
I'll think about it, Jerry. I'll think about it.
He tells him. A cough sounds from the door, and Jerry turns to see Professor Talk standing there. Talk explains that they seem to have the same problem, and that they might be able to help each other out. Upstairs, Rick enters Morty's office.
All right, bro. I think it's time we stepped our game up. We've got Jerry reeling, and it's time for phase 2.
He tells his grandson. Rick thinks that they should start selling off some of their stocks when Morty interrupts him with a question.
You got a mouse in your pocket, Rick?
He asks.
Because I'm hearing a lot of wheeze coming from you.
He tells him. Rick stands there for a moment.
Jesus, Morty! Mice don't even say we, they squeak! That isn't even up for debate!
Rick tells him. Morty tells him that that isn't the point. The point is that his names are the only ones on the forms, and that he's taking all the risks.
I think this partnership needs one less partner.
Morty explains. He pushes a button, asking Katogami to escort Rick out of the building. Rick snaps, showing Morty the device that they use to make all of the money, asking him if he wants to know how it really works.
It merges our timeline with one where the stocks that we invested in were successful. You want to know what happens in the other timelines? Poof! Gone! It literally eradicates another timeline every time I fire this bad boy up. And that blood is on your hands, Morty.
Rick yells at him. Rick tells him to enjoy his power trip and heads out the door. But they both are suddenly stopped as a voice calls from outside. Nobody move! We have you surrounded under jurisdiction of time law, the voice calls.
Jerry, what did you do?
Rick yells. Outside, Professor Talk informs them that they have obtained permission from the owner to conduct a full search of the premises.
What's going on, Rick?
Isn't it obvious? Jerry sold us out.
Rick tells him. He begins to scramble, grabbing random items, throwing them into a bag.
We gotta run, Morty. We've gotta start a new life.
He tells his grandson. The time police are suddenly at the window, and Rick grabs Morty's arm, ordering him to run.
Katagami! Initiate battle mode!
He yells over his shoulder, the robot transforming into a massive mech attacking the police. The building shakes around them as Rick and Morty continue to run.
Listen, Rick, for what it's worth, I'm really sorry I let the money go to my head.
Morty tells Rick. Rick pauses, wrapping his arm around Morty's shoulder.
Hey, don't even trip, dog.
Hey, it's like our conversation from earlier. That's a real, satisfying conclusion, isn't it, Rick?
Morty says. They both look down the stairs, seeing the police running up towards them. Rick sighs, telling Morty that he needs to do what he should have done in the first place.
open fire on some whack-ass motherfuckers.
He shouts, pulling out a ray gun. The police scatter. And later, the Intergalactic News shows Rick and Morty being put in the back of the Time Police van. Professor Talk stands there. It's about time we caught these bastards. And that concludes
God.
the live reading of Rick and Morty.
How did we do, guys?
I like your.
Did you like my
your
burps, though?
Your burps were good, but I just like the occasionally your Rick would,
just went
would
weird.
slip into like a southern drawl. Sometimes it was straight up Macho Man Randy Savage.
It's hard to keep
good.
the consistent voice. Like, goddamn.
So anyway, guys, this is going to be the Patreon and Twitch version where you get to see it live. If this does well, I think we can cut this up. I think you guys did great. I hope you guys enjoyed. If this does well, we'll do it again. Either way, this may have been a one-off, may not. Enjoy this, and we'll see what happens. Thank you.